Hi, this is Sweet Jude. How's everybody doing today? Um, I'm a reader. I love to read. It's always been my favorite pastime when I was in school. It's always been my favorite subject, and it's my favorite pastime. It's something that I love to do. And with all the technology and stuff, with the Facebook and all that stuff, I don't read as much as I should. But every now and then, I like to take technology breaks. I like to call them technology breaks, to where don't, I get off the Facebook, I get off the YouTube, and just take a good book and just sit down and read. And sometimes I read novels. I love Terry McMillan. She's like my favorite author. And sometimes I like to read a lot of informational books. I love to read informational books and stuff like that. Well, so every now and then I like to come on here and do book reviews. If I've read a book, I like to give a book review um, on the book that I read. And over the weekend, I read. It's been a lot of talk about Bobby Brown and his book Every Little Step. He's been doing a lot of interviews and stuff like that, and he's been talking about his book. So I said, I think I want to give her a read. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Bobby Brown. I do like some of his music. Tenderoni is like one of my favorite songs. Out of all the songs that he's done, Tenderoni is my favorite. I love that song. If I ever meet him, I want him to sing it for me. I absolutely love that song. I mean, it's like out of all his songs, I love some of his other songs, but I think out of everything that he's ever done, I think that's got to be my favorite. I love every time that song comes on, or I'm just I or I listen to it on my CD or whatever. I'm like, oh, that is my cut. I mean, I absolutely love that song. Out of all the things that he's done, that is my all-time favorite song. Is Tenderoni. I just love that song. So, but at the same, I'm not a huge fan of Bobby Brown, but at the same time, um, I'm a fan of Whitney Houston. He was married to Whitney Houston, and I'm a fan of Whitney Houston. And as everybody know, their marriage was very controversial. His marriage to Whitney Houston was very, very controversial. And with all the things going on lately with her passing, and with his daughter Bobby Chris passing, God rest their souls, it's really, really sad. Um, he's been doing a lot of interviews and everything, and he's been talking about basically just some of everything, his life, uh, his relationship with Whitney, trying to clear up some things, because for years people blamed him for Whitney's drug use. And ironically, I never blamed Bobby. I never blamed Bobby for Whitney's drug use, because I guess I'm a firm believer in personal responsibility. I've always been a firm believer in personal responsibility. And I believe that everybody uh, is responsible for their own actions. I think that we all make our own choices, and nobody can make you do anything if you don't want to do it. So I never really blamed Bobby for her drug use, but uh, her brother admitted in an interview with Oprah Winfrey that he introduced her to drugs. And so it was never Bobby's fault, but for years and years and years, people blamed him for introducing Whitney to drugs. And it wasn't even his fault, which I never blamed him in the first place. Um, so it was just a lot of controversy surrounding their marriage, and a lot of speculation, and people that was thinking that he was the wrong guy for her. And I'm sorry, I gotta admit, I was one of those people. Because Whitney had this image, and she had a public image, and her public image was different than who she really was. She had two different, like her public image, her as an entertainer. She was real classy, and I mean, she was a class act. Whitney was a class act. I mean, she had the gowns, and she wasn't like some of these artists. that come out today. I'm not trying to talk about anybody, but she wasn't like some of the other artists. That some of these artists like to take off their clothes and all that kind of stuff. Whitney was a class act, and I think that was one of the things that I loved about her. She was a class act. She didn't need any gimmicks. I mean, she was very, very talented. She had a very beautiful voice. And all that girl had to do was get on, rock her gown, and get out there on stage, and just start belting out a song. And that's all she needed to do. She didn't even need to dance too much. I mean, her voice was so profound, and she had such a beautiful voice that just between her presence and her voice just spoke volumes all in itself. And so, and she was just a class act. I mean, the girl, I never seen anybody rock a gown as good as my girl Whitney. I mean, that girl could rock a gown. And she was just a class actor. So when you see her perform, you looked at this classy lady, and you so when you think of a mate for her, you think of someone distinguished. And I don't know about everybody else, but I always picture her with like a Billy D. Williams type or a Denzel Williams type. Those like guys. I don't really know who they are in person, but they seem like they were really classy guys. So I kind of pictured her with a guy similar to that caliber. And so when I got to admit that when she got hooked up with Bobby, I was shocked just like everybody else. I was like, oh, really? you know, so needless to say, to make a long story short, when I seen the show Me and Bobby Brown, that the reality show that they had, after that I was like, oh, I am so sorry, guys. I was like, I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. You guys belong together. Because it just showed a totally different side of Whitney. I mean, that showed a totally different side to her that nobody ever knew that she had. And so, um, anyway, to make a long story short, um, I just thought it was very interesting because I read Cissy Houston's, her mom had wrote a book, and I read that book, and I read um, the one where this guy's talking about her and Bobby Chris, the Deadly Price of Fame. I read that one, and so I wanted to get his side of the story. He said in this book, he is giving his side of the story. And I thought it was interesting. I said, oh, that'd be kind of interesting. I would love to get his side of the story. I'd like to find out how things happen from his perspective. Not really sure that he's telling the whole truth. I'm not going to talk too much about what's in the book because I'm going to let you guys read it because I don't want to give away too much of the book. But I felt like he was very candid. He was very candid in the book, and he talked about it's a good read. I read it like I got it on Friday. I was done with it by Saturday night. Of course, I'm a fast reader. And if I get a book and it's a page turner, I can read that thing in a day's time. Because I'm a very fast reader. Sometimes I read too fast. Sometimes I like to take my time and savor the book. But I'd be so excited to find out, what's going to be the next chapter, and then I'm so excited to get to the end of the book. So I just keep reading and reading and reading, and I'm a fast reader, so I'm just next thing you know, I'm at the end of the book. Well, so I started it on Friday night, and I ended it on Saturday night. And I have to tell you, you guys got to give this book a read. It's a good read. Um, he's being very candid in the book, and he talks about when he was growing up back in Boston, and he talked about his parents. I was really impressed because he talked about his parents. Um, it's a lot of information in the book that you never knew about him. Like I didn't know what his life was like growing up back in Boston. So he talks about what his life was like growing up in Boston, when his mom and dad was still married, and he talks about he goes into that, and he's just had a lot of loss in his life. He suffered a lot of loss in his life. At a young age, he lost his friend, and then he lost another friend, and he lost his two parents, and then he lost Whitney, and then he lost his daughter Bobby Chris. I mean, he's had a lot of loss in his life, and so it kind of the book kind of takes you from when he was growing up in Boston all the way up until after Bobby Chris, his daughter Bobby Chris, God rest his soul, passed. So it's a really, I would highly recommend this book. It's a very good read. Some of the things that I read in the book was really shocking. Some of the things that he, because I don't know if you guys caught the interview between Oprah Winfrey, uh, the interview that he gave or that she gave with Oprah Winfrey, was she was saying that he cheated on her, and that she left him, and all this kind of stuff. She was saying that she left him, and he was the one cheated on her. Well, in the book, he's saying it's just the opposite. So I'm not going to give away too much of the book, but he's saying that in the book it's just the opposite. That he was the one that left her. So I said, now I'm confused because she said she's the one left him, and so I said, well, it's his side and her side, somewhere in the middle lies the truth. I said, you know how they say it's his side, her side, and somewhere in the middle there's the truth. And so we'll never hear. We heard her side of the story, but she can't come back and refute anything that he said because that's the problem. See, that's the problem with the book when he's talking about Whitney. Um, the problem is that she's no longer with us, and so she can't come back and say, that's not true. I don't know why he put that in the book. That's not true. You know what I'm saying? No, this is how it went. You know what I'm saying? So she can't come back and refute anything that he said, and so. But it was very interesting because he talks about from when they first met, um, and he talks about their marriage, and um, how they were really, they from what now their his account, he says that they were really in love. Well, her interview with Oprah, she said they were really in love too. So that matched, so it would be safe to say that they were very, very much in love with each other. And he talks about he had a relationship. Well, he did a couple of interviews where he actually said that he had a relationship with Janet Jackson, and so he goes into detail about that. And I was surprised at all the women that he said he was with. He said he was with quite a few women, so I was surprised. Well, I wasn't surprised, but then again I was. So he talks about the women that he was with, and he started using drugs, and so it's a very, I would highly recommend this book. It's called Every Little Step, My Story, Bobby Brown, and it's a good read. I would highly recommend it. Like I say, he's going from when he grew up in Boston all the way up until he lost Bobby Chris, and he's talking about his feelings at the time um, when he first found out about her, when they first found her. He talks about his feelings and how he felt, and that was pretty interesting. That was interesting to know how he felt during that time, and because at that time when that was all going on, the only thing you had to rely on was the media, and now everybody knows that everything that the media say is not correct. And so you really didn't know. It was really interesting to me to find out what was really going on in his heart, what was really going on in his head at the time. So he talks about that in the book, and it was really tragic because he lost his father like a year before. I think he lost his father, and then his mother passed. Like I think a couple of months after his father passed. No, wait a minute. His father passed. I mean, his. I'm sorry. Excuse me. His mother passed first, and then his father passed. It was. I think it was within a few months of each other, and then shortly after his father passed, Whitney passed. I think that's how it went. And then Bobby Chris. So he's had a lot of loss in his life, and he's basically saying, I'm trying to get everything. I'm trying to get myself together. I'm trying to be happy. And so I think the book is a good read. He talks about his earlier days with New Edition and how they got started, and I thought that was really interesting. I remember when they first came on the scene. I remember when I first seen one of their first videos back in the 80s. And So he talks about how all that came about and how he started the group, and um, how they all came together, and the early years when they first started singing and everything like that. He was saying that they wouldn't hardly making no money, and so that was really really interesting. Um, Ironically, my oldest son's dad, used to be a concert promoter, and he said that he promoted I guess they did a concert here in the town that I live in, and he promoted that concert. So he had the opportunity to meet Bobby Brown, in New Edition. And so, that ironically, so I just thought that was really, really interesting. I just thought that was really interesting how he talked about that. And I just think it's a good read. He talks about, you know, he goes into full detail about Whitney and his drug use, both of their drug use and everything. He goes into full detail about that, and he does admit that he does in fact admit that they failed Bobby Chris. He does say that in the book. He thinks that they failed her, and that she was exposed to a little bit too much. So he does it. He does. I was really glad to see that he admitted to that in the book. Because it didn't seem like he was really taking responsibility for that. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it didn't seem like he was taking responsibility for that before. So it was really nice to hear him, to read that he actually admitted to that in the book. And so the book is a good read. I would highly recommend it. I would highly recommend that you give it a read. If you want to sit down with a good novel, if you want to curl up with a good novel, this is a good one. Every Step by Story Bobby Brown. It's a good book. It really is a good read. Like I said, I'm a fast reader. I read it within 24 hours. So, yeah, it's a very good read. I would highly recommend that you give it a read. I mean, very enlightening, and it tells you his side of the story. He gives his side of the story as to what happened in the relationship. Like I said, I don't know if it's all true. Um, I don't know. I guess that's between him and God. So, but he, nevertheless, he gives his side of the story. So, let me know in the comment section if you read this book, what you think about it. What's your opinion? How did you feel about it? If not, give it a read. Hit me back up. Let me know what you think about it. Okay, I got some more interesting video topics coming up. This is Sweet June 2010.